Hear me okay? There we go. All right. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful, nice little drive coming from Atlanta. That was pretty. And I'm really happy to be here. I don't know if it's too much trouble to have that one behind me, that screen, because I want to show the temple. Maybe I could highlight something. Sorry, man. I'm just driving you nuts today.
You might get flashed in the eye.
That's okay. That's all right. I'll move a lot anyway. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. How many of you never heard me speak before? Good. Don't believe anything I say. Let me give you a little background. I was born in Puerto Rico. I was raised in California. I lived in Florida since 88, because in 1988 I played baseball for the Yankees and the Mets in the minor leagues. So I moved to Florida, and then I scouted for the White Sox for 10 years, and then that's when I began to study the Word of God. And since 1998, I've been in the journey of the Torah and teaching the Bible. So best job in the world right now. So I'm very happy to do this. For the last 22 years, I've been researching, studying, and my favorite topic is the temple. My teacher is Joseph Good, and he's been teaching the temple for 42 years. And one of the things that I have tried to do is study context of the Bible. So tonight is going to be more like a little study. I'm going to show you some things that I have here for you. Hopefully it'll be a blessing, and it will challenge you to look at the New Testament from a different perspective. Many times we read the New Testament. I'm not going to talk about the Torah today, because if you're here for the first time listening to me, I want to make a connection. Explain a little bit about the temple, which is one of the most neglected areas of study, and a lot of misconceptions. So I would like to, spend the time sharing some of the evidence in the New Testament that point to the temple service in the first century, after the Messiah died and resurrected. Okay, and then if we have a little time, we can take questions in regards to that topic. But I think it'll be interesting, And the biggest thing is to come together to study together. To just validate information. I tell people all the time, don't believe anything I say, and I mean it. Go back and look it up. If I'm wrong, I don't mind changing. I don't mind fixing it, because we are in this journey together, and the whole idea is for God to be right and for us to serve. Amen. Right? Amen? Will you open with a word of prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we just come before you tonight, and we just ask you to open our eyes, our hearts, and our minds to be in line with your word, Father, to lead us wherever you would have us to go. Allow us to see things that we haven't seen, and be able to connect the pieces that maybe we haven't connected. And Father, we will give you all the praise, all the glory, and all the honor. It's in Yeshua's name that we pray.
Amen. Okay, right off the get-go, I want to explain a little bit about the principles of the temple and what the temple represents. There are 613 commandments in the Torah. How many of you are not aware of Torah? The language is a little different. Let me know. How many of you have been following Torah understanding for more than 5 years? Raise your hand. Less than 5 years. Okay, good. Gives me an idea. All right. But the temple is the area that either if you study for 20 or 5 or 2, is not very much concentrated focus. So there are 613 commandments in the Torah, right? How many of those commandments do you suppose are directly linked to the temple out of 613? 270. That's pretty good. You got a good teacher. So now what's interesting is in this week's Torah portion alone, we have 74 commandments. So clearly the Torah is the instruction book that allows us to understand how to approach God. That's really the whole bottom line. The temple is the blueprint that the Creator has established in order to teach us how to approach Him, how to honor Him, how to praise Him, how to pray to the Father. Just like we did today with the liturgy. You actually went through a liturgy. You did a prayer, you did songs, then you did another prayer. You introduced me, then we did another prayer, now you have the word. There is a protocol that is followed in the Bible. And even Genesis 1:1 is a worship. It's a worship chapter. The worship of God, as Him as the only sovereign of the universe. Sadly, when we go into the New Testament understanding, there's a disconnect. Because they told us Yeshua died and resurrected and everything's done away with. But yet, what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to highlight for you certain verses that is connected directly with the temple. And then we have to ask basic questions, not to create controversy or not to create division or doubt, but to endorse and to help us understand really what is written here. Because let me ask you a question. How many of you honestly do not still understand the Bible? Right? All of us. I study 7 hours a day. I still don't know. And that's an exciting part to know that in our journey to learning, sometimes we get derailed in side topics that don't edify anybody. But instead of focusing on 45% of the Bible, over 272 commandments directly linked with the temple, which is 45% of the Bible is directly to that house. That's the least amount of area we spend time in. Right? It's like, what is the first topic of conversation when you meet someone? First, what is your name? What do you do? And then, how many kids and do you have a family? Right? Well, hello. We meet the Lord. What is your name? Okay, we know his name. What do you do? I'm the creator of the universe, right? That's what he is. And where is your house? And who is your family? We never connected like that. So those are the questions that I've asked. What is his name? Where is his house? What does the house represent? Who is the family? And how does God relate to his family so that we can learn how to relate to one another? So the first thing about the temple is that the temple, I want to make sure. I make sure. The temple, this is the city of Jerusalem. Right from the get-go, I want you to get a glimpse of what holiness is. So let me ask you, when I ask you these questions, I'm not pretending or being mean to you as if I know and you don't. If I ask you and you don't know, raise your hand, because it allows me to know how far I should spend on that topic. Is that okay? Yes. And so you'll be really helping me. So how many of you have never studied the principle of Kedusha, which means holiness in the Bible? Excellent. Have you ever wondered why, when you read the Bible and you start reading in the book of Leviticus, it appears that God is a separatist? In other words, God says, I don't want this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy in my house, in my city. That's how everyone perceives it. Well, yeah, there are laws that keeps you away from the Lord. They're impossible to keep. No, it's just that, and I'm going to connect it with your everyday life. If I go to your house, right? Let's just say I go to your house. And then you assign me a room. That is my sacred space. Even though it's your house, if you want to go into the room that you assigned to me, you knock on the door. Hey, Rico, can I go into your room? But it's not my room, it's your house. But for that time period that I'm in your house, you have selected that to be my sacred space. I could basically do, within reason, do whatever I want in that room that is lawful and etiquette, right? Because you assigned it to me, and you give me a bathroom. But there's a common area in your house. But then normally I have my seat. That's where I sit. My wife doesn't sit, and my kids don't sit there either. And when I travel, when I visit places and I stay with people's homes, I always ask the person in the house, where is your seat? At the table, where is your seat? In the living room. Making sure that I'm not going to encroach in someone's sacred space. You follow? Yeah. It's just etiquette. Yeah. Okay. Then there's a kitchen. There's the living room area. There's a family room. But then the sacred space, which is your bedroom. In your bedroom, where there's marriage, there are that's sacred space. Even my kids in my house do not cross the threshold of my bedroom. They knock on the door. One is 29, the other one's 24. Can I come in? No. Okay. Because it's my sacred space. If we're going to define the word holy, it's sacred. It's the most set apart place in my house. My bedroom where my wife and I sleep. Now imagine if you invite me to your house. I sit in your chair. I tell you how to cook. And then I ended up sleeping in your bedroom without your proper authorization. How long would I last in your house? You see? You see, because you look at me like, what are you doing? You are a guest in my house. No, let's complicate matters. What if I just you invite me to go have dinner, and I'm just all stinky. I'm just been all day in the sun, this beautiful Alabama, heat. Then when I go in, I can't even stand myself. But then I go in, sit in your... I don't even take a shower before I go and wash my hands or anything. What does the wife tell your husband? And when you're cutting the grass all day long and you want to give her a hug when you come in the house, what's the first thing you ladies say? Thank you. Right? Exactly what happens when you go up to the house of my king. When you go up to the house of my king, because it's sacred space. The city is sacred space. The temple is sacred space, because that is the throne of my king. Thus he says, you can come and watch. You can come and see me. Come and visit me. I'm going to invite you to 3 pilgrimage festivals: Passover, Pentecost, and Sukkot. I would invite you. Come with your best clothes, with your best attitude, with the best offering. Before you come up into my sacred space, my house, take a shower. It means an immersion. Then wear nice garments. Then don't wear shoes in my house. You cannot wear shoes in the temple, because shoes in the ancient world at the time of the temple represented authority and ownership. That's why the Muslims never wear any shoes when they go into their mosque. So no one can sit in the temple. No one can take their shoes into the temple, because it was disrespect to God's sacred space. Now you know why the angel told Moses, remove your sandals, for where you're standing is holy ground. Yes. You see? So let me get this straight. We have rules in our homes that establish a sacred space. That's your baby's sacred space. If I think I'm a baby and I get there acting like a baby, you think I'm a fool. At least here, out there, you think you're normal. Right? Don't get me started with that one. Okay? So in God's house, there are rules and there's sacred space that we never really understand. When I submit to you that Yeshua respected all of these sacred spaces. Yeshua never went into the area where the priests were there. He never stood where the Levites stood. He never went into the holy place, never went into the Holy Holies. Why? He is the Son of God. Because that was not his role. His role was, as the son of David, to bring the restoration of the kingdom and the 12 tribes together, not to usurp the authority of the priest in the temple. Just that in itself, if we understand that in itself, then every congregation will run smoothly. Why? Because then the leadership would establish roles and jobs described for them. When I came in here, there's a gentleman dealing with the cameras and the computers back there. There is the organizer. There is the piano player. My brother was playing over here earlier. There were some singers over here. You have the proper songs. You follow a protocol. We respect all of that. But then when we try to talk about the temple, no one wants to study it. And the reason is because, sadly, we are so far removed from the first century environment that when we look at Scripture, we don't realize that the center of Scripture in reality is about God's throne, where he dwells, where he wants to have intimacy with you, where he wants you to come visit him. He wants you to have fellowship with him. Now, let's go to Exodus chapter 40. I'm going to show you something. And this is something that I want you to meditate on. The tabernacle's been built. This is the climax of the whole Exodus experience on Mount Sinai. They get redeemed out of Egypt. They go to Mount Sinai. God says, okay, I give you commandments. Now build me a tabernacle that I may dwell within you, among you. Okay? Then he gives them the instructions. And then in verse 34, it says, then the cloud, can somebody help me read? Verse 34, chapter 40. Let's make it interactive. Verse 34, chapter 40. Anybody?
And the cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle.
Keep going, keep going.
Okay. Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because of the cloud abode thereon. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of the house of Israel throughout their journey. All
right. So, in verse, let me read you from 1 Kings. I'll go there. You don't have to go there. 1 Kings, when the dedication of first temple, during the time of Solomon, in the tabernacle, the glory of the Lord came, and what happens? Moses could not go where? Where? No one can do anything. In 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 12, Solomon spoke. The Lord, he said, let me see which verse it is. Verse 11. Yeah, 8:11. It says, and it came to pass when the priests came out of the holy place that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not continue ministering because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Okay. You're thinking, where's he going with this? Let's just pretend that these verses were written, specifically Exodus, and then the whole story of the temple ends in chapter 40. All you learn is what? That God filled the house, that no one can minister because of the cloud. And then you're thinking, the first question you ask, but I want to commune with him. That was the purpose of the tabernacle. So he may dwell among us. Well, what are the rules of conduct? What if I do something wrong? How do I fix it?
Sacrifice.
That's what I'm saying. But if the Bible doesn't teach you the book of Leviticus, you will have no idea how to approach God. You will have no clue what to do. Now, let me give you a little ancient Near Eastern background. I don't know if you've been following. Who's been following my ministry for a little while? Okay, so you know that I've been studying a lot of ancient Near Eastern history. I focused on that. It was so compelling to me that I went back to college to finish my bachelor's and my master's in this. Now, I got to tell you, the more I know, the less I know. The titles mean nothing. It's just that they saw my work. They go, how come you're not being accredited for this? I don't know. I just like to study the Bible. Oh, you go. You know. Thank you. Saved me $2,000, $3,000. Appreciate it. But I spent a lot more money getting the resources. But one of the things that I've learned was that in the ancient world, they believed that the gods, you can never please them. You never knew how to please the gods. There was no instruction. They called it capricious. They believed the gods, they were just like, they had temper tantrums. You never knew how to please them. So you will bring an offering and not know how to please that particular god of the ancient world. It may be the Hittites, or maybe the Canaanites, maybe the Sumerians, or maybe the Egyptians. They were called mysteries. The whole sacrifices were called mysteries. Only certain people knew what was going on. Everyone else had no idea what's going on. It was a mystery. So you just leave it and leave, because he may kill you, demons may attack you. Well, wait a minute. The God of Israel, right from the get-go, establishes perimeters completely different than any other society. He gives you in detail, what you ought to do in case you want to bring a free will offering of thanksgiving, or if you messed up unwillfully, or if you did something against your neighbor, willfully or unwillful. If I did something to you because I didn't like you, thank God the Bible doesn't say I have to like you. It says I have to love you.
That's right.
Because I don't like myself half the time. Don't tell me that you like yourself all the time, because I don't. Sometimes I don't like myself. Okay? But we have to love one another, correct? Okay. So now what happens is, in this week's Torah portion, we have an example. If you have a neighbor who loses something, you have to take care of it for him. It didn't care how you feel about the guy. You have to protect his property. So imagine if you don't have these instructions, then how can we be civil with one another? And the reason why we are not civil with one another is because we're not reading God's instructions. Because if we did, then we will never criticize that beautiful house. It's all about him teaching you how to approach him. There is a protocol. Let me ask you a question. Do you all believe Yeshua is the Messiah, right? You better. If not, I'm leaving. Okay? If Yeshua will walk in through the door right now, would you know how to render honor to him the proper way? The way that a king is supposed to be received? You know what to say, when to say it, when to stand, when to bow? Then we got a problem. You can tell me Yeshua will be king, but if you don't know how to receive him, then when he shows up, you're going to be really embarrassed, because I don't want you trying to run to him, give him a hug. I will smack you. You do not do that to my king. Can you go and just run up to the president and give him a hug any which way you want to? You're going to have, special officers just throwing you on the ground if you don't get shot first. So the temple is the microcosm of the garden. The temple represents the garden in Eden. The temple is the throne of God. Let's go to Ezekiel 43 real quick. This is going to be the premise of our teaching from here. I think I actually have it here. So Ezekiel 43. verse 10 to verse 12. Listen to this. As for you, mortal, describe the temple to the house of Israel, and let them measure the pattern, and let them be ashamed of their iniquities. When they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the plan of the temple, its arrangements, its exits, its entrances, its whole form, all its ordinances, and its entire plan, and all its laws. Right? Yes? And it says, and write it down in their sight, so that they may observe and follow the entire plan and all its ordinances. This is the law of the temple. The whole territory on top of the mountaintop, all around, shall be most holy. This is the law of the temple. This is kind of straight up, isn't it? That's a law. We are always zealous about, let's keep the law, but yet we don't keep this one. Because it takes time. And I know that. Why do I care about knowing the measurements of the temple? Well, God said to do it. What is that? Well, if I had 10 hours, I will show it to you. That's what changed my life, to study the temple. Understanding the dimensions from one court to the next one. The measurements are different. Like, for example, let's say we have this building. So we are on an elevated platform, right? So there's elevation outside. So the measurements they use, instead of using the regular feet, the foot, okay, they will use a different type of foot. That the higher to a level you come, the higher the measurement of the foot will be. That's how the temple was built. Now, what does that mean to us today? That if you want to go to a high level of holiness, not only do you have to leave your past behind, not only do you have to be committed to observe in the high level of relationship with God, but you also, in your physical step, you have to go from a higher level. You see, someone can be standing here. This is a level. I could be in front of you and teach you. But you've been conditioned that the moment someone does this, they reach a different level. Not everybody can stand here during the service. Right? And how many people can stand here and teach you during the service? Right? Therefore, that's exactly how the temple was. The higher the elevation, the greater the height. Physically, literally, why? To teach you that the closer you come to the holier, not only do you come alone, but you also, it takes a stronger commitment and a higher level of commitment and elevation. That's all depicted just by this. One step. I just went to a higher level of commitment. Because not just anybody who stands here can just speak. It takes a high level of commitment to be here and to say stuff to you, because I'm representing you, representing God on the earth. We are His image. Is that making sense? That's just from the measurements. But let's go back to, if you have Ezekiel 43, verse 6 and 7. Can somebody read it for me?
When I heard someone speaking to me from the house while a man was standing beside me, he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, the place of the souls of my people.
Okay, I want you to read that part again. This is the place of my...
This is the place of my throne, the place of the souls of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of B'nai Israel forever.
Okay, thank you so much. That is important. If that is the throne of God, then how come we're not studying it? Well, He will dwell with us forever? Well, He teaches us how to approach Him? How come no lepers were ever allowed? I'm going to give you the answer before I go on the rest of the weekend. Is that okay? The temple, repeat after me, you can trust me in this one, represents the realm of life. And the city of Jerusalem too. Okay? Simple. Anything outside the city walls represents the realm of death. It's that simple. So if you want to go from the realm of death to the realm of life, God establishes perimeters of holiness, behavior, and conduct in order to be in the presence of His throne. There's a protocol. There are songs. There that you need to take a shower. You need to present yourself. You bring your best tribute. You bring tribute. The offerings. You know what the offerings? It's interesting. We're going to fix this language tonight. Instead of saying offerings, we say sacrifices. Because in the Western world, sacrifices, when you think sacrifice, you think death. Right? But in Hebrew, it means korban, which means to bring near. Offerings. Offerings. Correct?
Yes.
Do you know what the offerings for God did? You know what the purpose was? Not only to restore your relationship if you did something unwillful, or if you just brought something out of your gratitude to God for giving you provision, but also to provide the food source for the priest. It was the food source of the priests and the Levites and their families, because their jobs was completely dependent on your reciprocity with God and bringing your best to Him. So this is a function of a well-oiled machine working in that big old enterprise called the temple, which provided jobs and provided sustenance for people all throughout. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever studied the administration and how it worked in the temple? It's amazing. I could open any company and follow the same protocol, and we'll be successful. Because it establishes what order is. So the temple and the city represents order. Anything outside of the city walls represents chaos. As a matter of fact, you see this area right here? You see this little area right here? This area was this area on the north, right here. This is the valley of Kidron Valley. See with this pool, Bethesda pool? This was right before, during the time of Yeshua. After Yeshua died and resurrected, King Agrippa, he added from here all the way a third wall, really big. Okay? Did you know that when they added that wall, the priest needed to sanctify the wall? Because you could only eat the Passover lamb inside the city walls. You cannot eat the Passover lamb, Korban Pesach. No, stop talking to me. Okay. All right. Stop it. All right. So all of a sudden now you have the city walls. Within the city walls and the place we have chosen. That's the only way, the only place that you can slaughter the lamb in the temple and then eat it within the city walls. You cannot do it outside. You know why? Because Passover meal is a high level holiness. And it has to be inside the realm of life, not the realm of death. Now, Rico, what can you prove that? How can you prove that? I'm glad you asked me that. Let's go to Deuteronomy 16. Deuteronomy 16. You getting something out of this already? Okay. In verse 5 forward, let me read verse 4. It says, let's go from verse 1. Observe the month of Aviv and keep the Passover of the Lord your Elohim. For in the month of Aviv the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. Therefore you shall sacrifice the Passover of the Lord your God from the flock and the herd, and the place where the Lord your God chooses to put His name. That be Jerusalem. Okay, that happened later on. It says, therefore you shall sacrifice the Passover lamb to the Lord your God. I'll read that. Verse 3. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread with it, that is, the bread of affliction, for you came out of the land of Egypt in haste, that you may remember the day in which you came out of Egypt in all the days of your life. And no leaven shall be among you in all of your territory for 7 days, nor shall any of the meat which you sacrifice the first day of the twilight remain overnight until morning, because it's considered holy. Now, do you know why there was no leaven allowed anywhere? Because the Egyptians used to worship some of the fertility the goddesses in the spring, and if they didn't have a piglet, they would use bread offerings with leaven. Therefore, you're not allowed to do leaven in the temple, so that no one would think that you are offering to the gods of fertility. It's all a contrast. Now you know why. Okay? Because that's the only feast that no leaven is allowed. That's very unusual. You got to ask the question, why? Now we know it's a contrast between God's perfection and the ancient world's worship. The temple is a complete opposite of what the worships of the ancient gods did. And it's the only way we have to consider that. Because if you start reading like I have, the Memphite theology and the ancient Near Eastern history of temples and Greco-Roman gods, they all had temples, they all had priests, they all had sacrifices. So what's the difference between our God and their gods? Very simple. Their gods is all focused on the underworld and death, versus our God and his temple is all about life. Completely different. Completely different. Okay? All right, so let's keep reading. Verse 5. You shall not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which the Lord your God gives you, but at the place where the Lord your God choose to make his name abide. There you shall offer the Passover at twilight, at the going down of the sun, at the time that you came out of Egypt. Now, does that mean that you cannot eat lamb here in America for Passover? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you are not legally able to take a lamb, go down to your door frame, kill it at the door frame, put the blood on the doorpost, and call it Passover lamb. That is a huge don't do it. Because if you do, you are now taking the job of the blood manipulation that only belongs to the priest and no one else. Numbers 18. Leviticus 1 through 7. Okay? That's very important. People are going around doing, I want to do it like in Egypt. Well, it's interesting. The Jews never did it like in Egypt when they left Egypt. Do you think there's a reason for it? Because they understand law. Okay? So normally that creates a lot of chaos every time I mention it, but that's okay. You guys are good. So what we have is understanding what life is. How come the lepers can never be inside the city?
Because they're not clean.
Yes, but what the leprosy, not the way we know it today, that's Hansen's disease, but leprosy represented what?
Sin.
Which led to death. So leprosy represented dead men walking. So you cannot go into the city, not because God did not want to, commune with that person as a human being, but because he was contagious. The realm of death. Now it separated you from the realm of life. Now that leads us into another topic, which is called moral sin and moral behavior and ritual. Moral impurity and ritual impurity. Moral impurity and ritual impurity. What separates you from God is not ritual impurity, it's moral impurity. Let's go to Revelation chapter 21. This is a recap for tomorrow. A preview for tomorrow. Okay? Tomorrow I want to explain to you what the Yeshua come to do. Because if we are talking about temple and offerings, and I'm going to show you how offerings were still going on for 40 years after Yeshua died and resurrected, then you're going to ask the question, wait a minute. So what did Yeshua do? It's only logical. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I'm staying with you guys right here. All right? Okay, watch this. Can somebody read Revelation 21, verse 1 through 4? Anybody. Don't be shy. Somebody.
I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had passed away, and the sea was no longer there. And I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud voice from the throne say, "See, God, Shalom, is with mankind, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and he himself, God with them, will be their God."
Okay, now check this out. This is after the millennium. This is the last great judgment. The millennium is over. Now God is going to come down on the earth with the city. Read the next verse, please.
He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. They will no longer be any death, and there will no longer be any mourning, crying, or pain, because the old order has passed away.
Wait a minute. So the key in that verse is what? There will be no more death. That's the key. That's Isaiah 25, verse 8. Let's go to Isaiah 25, verse 8. I want to show you something. What did Yeshua come to do? Tomorrow, this is going to be the focus of my teaching tomorrow night. And I want you to come ready because I'm not doing it in an hour. I want it a little longer. I really want to get you to understand how important it is to know these principles so that when people start attacking us in our faith, we can defend it the proper way using the Bible. Because Paul told us all about. But if we do not understand the temple, we're not going to see the contrast. And then when the sacrifices begin again in the millennial reign, many believers will be speaking against it because they're just completely oblivious to its context. Okay? So who's got Isaiah 25 verse 8?
He will swallow up death forever. My Lord Adonai will wipe away tears from every face. He will remove his people's reproach from all the earth, for Adonai has spoken.
You know how many times that verse is quoted in the New Testament? Like 3 or 4 times. 1 Corinthians 15 twice. Revelation 21. I mean, you find it everywhere. Paul talked about it in Romans chapter 1 through 6. How the first Adam introduced death, and now the second Adam. It's very interesting because now, all of a sudden, everything makes sense. Because you have to ask the question, if Yeshua is supposedly the last sacrifice, then how come that we're having sacrifices for 40 straight years after Yeshua died and resurrected? How come for 40 days after he resurrected, 40 days, my sister, in 40 days, you can do a lot of damage. And if you have a lot of power, how much damage can you do in 40 days? We're witnessing it.
Yes, sir. Yes, we are.
Right? Okay, so how come Yeshua never once said anything about the temple, its priesthood, the sacrifices, the offerings, or Jerusalem in 40 days after his resurrection? Not one iota. Not one piece of information. Not one word in the Gospels that Yeshua said, don't go into the temple. It's no longer acceptable to God. You will think, if it's that important, that Yeshua will take a lot of time in 40 days to instruct all of his disciples to say, okay, guys, we're in the priesthood now. Those guys are done away with. Let me show you how. Do we have that evidence in the New Testament? Then how come we attack the one thing that not even the Messiah said anything about after his resurrection? Because we don't study it. And that's what the Lord has called me to do, the research and study. So I know you may not have the time. All I need you to do is go validate it. I'm willing to do the work. I don't have a problem with that at all. I love to study the temple. And when I think I know something, I go back and validate it. And I have a teacher who's been studying it longer than me, 42 years. Eventually, here are the tools. Utilize them so that we don't make the same mistakes as our forefathers. So death is the essence of the work of Yeshua. He came to restore order. Whose order? God's order. Right? This message is so powerful that in Genesis 1, it's all about an enthronement ceremony. Genesis 1 is all about an enthronement ceremony. The earth was empty and desolate. It was in chaos. And it was the God of Israel who actually brought order from the chaos in creation. The argument about who the true God is over. At the moment that says, and the Spirit of God hover over the waters of the sea, it's in Genesis 1. Let's go to Genesis 1. In Genesis 1, it opens a very unique way. Let me ask you all a question. Have you ever studied about order and chaos in the ancient world? The Enuma Elish story of creation? Or the Ugaritic creation myth by the Canaanites? And the Memphite theology of the Egyptians? I mean, they are living. Now, let me ask you a question before I go to Genesis. Don't let me forget about Genesis. Don't let me forget about Genesis. Okay? Because I just go on different routes. I forgot what I was going to say now. All right? Okay, so when you study the book of Exodus, which Israel spent over 200 years there, not 400, 210 years to be exact, okay? That's 2 centuries. Yes?
Yes.
I mean, I've only been in America for 40 years. Actually, no, 42 now. 1979, 42 years. I live in the United States. Best country in the world, other than Israel. Okay? I love it here. I was born in Puerto Rico, raised in Puerto Rico, then I moved here. Man, amazing. Okay, so I moved here. So I needed to study the culture. I needed to graft myself into the language. You know, I learned English when I was 13 years old. I have an accent, can't do anything about it. But I've learned your language. I went to college. I studied history, geography, topography. I mean, it's amazing. I travel already, I think I've been to 48 states. You know, I've traveled all over the place. A beautiful country. But I had to study your country, your constitution, your Bill of Rights. Okay, so, because if I live in your country, I need to know who you are. So how can we study the book of Exodus and never study Egyptology? And that's where they lived. The whole worldview of the Israelites coming out of Egypt was from the perspective of an Egyptian. So if you live in Mesopotamia like Abraham did, that's where he came from. How come we are not studying ancient Near Eastern Mesopotamian history? Because he came from there. If we did, now we would understand why God told Abraham to take Isaac and put him on the altar. Because the Canaanites believed that if you sacrifice your firstborns to the gods of the underworld, that will guarantee them having more children. So God says, I want you to take your son, your only son whom you know, whom you love, to the mountains that I will show you. And Abraham just got up and did it. Wait, time out. He doesn't have a relationship with this guy yet. He's learning to get to know the God of Israel. And then he tells him, take your son and put him on an altar, and he does it? I mean, does that sound logical to you? Unless Abraham understood this through culture, that was the way they used to worship their gods, and now God is trying to make a contrast to say, no, excuse me. I just wanted you to know that I'm not the God of death. I am the God of life. And he proved Abraham's faith, that after all the years waiting without honor for a child, when he had it, he was willing to put it on the altar, believing on a God he's never seen before. And yet God says, no, stop. I'm not like those gods over there. I'm real, and it's all about life with me. You see the difference? About the Babylonian captivity, you have Ezra, Nehemiah, in the Persian captivity, in the Persian time frame. Do we study the Babylonian captivity? Babylon? How about Sumeria or the Assyrians? I mean, the book of Esther had to do with the Persians. How come we're not studying the Persian captivity or the Persian kingdom? To understand why they sent Ezra and then Zechariah, Malachi, Haggai, Zerubbabel back to Jerusalem to build the temple. It's only logical questions. But we tried to open a book that was written to an audience who understood its surroundings, like in Egypt. But then we tried to apply the same understanding when we read Genesis. Now, the themes all the themes, let me show you this. The themes, I don't know if I have it on this one. I hope I do, or maybe don't. Can I ask you for a favor? Can you open that other PowerPoint for me? I'm sorry to bother you. And maybe I just want to show one slide I think is very important. Is this making sense? Today is just making you think about where I'm going to go tomorrow. Okay? Because if I'm trying to teach you something completely unrelated, I want to connect it. Because there's a very interesting thread that I want you to be aware of. So when you study the Bible, you're not going to need me. Because once I make aware to you the themes of Scripture, you see them through Genesis, from Genesis to Revelation, the same themes. But its history, its time frame is different. Let me give an example. Is helping a widow the same today as it was back in the time of Abraham? Nope. It was different, right? Yes. They got more benefits now. I mean, my mom is a widow. We try to take care of her, but you know how much money she already spent to go to hospitals in the last 10 years? There's no way I could have kept track of that. Okay, so now we have more advantages, depends where you live. Okay, the way an elderly is taken care of in America is a lot better than South Africa, trust me. Right? But we complain. We don't know any other contrast. Okay? Let me know when you're ready, brother. Okay, so when we study the book of Esther, we never consider what time frame and what kingdom. When we study the book of Ruth, we don't even know what time of the year that happened. And the text tells us if we know the temple. Because it happened during the time of the barley and then the wheat harvest, correct? Yes. That is between Passover and Pentecost. Now we know exactly during that time, which time the events of the book of Ruth occurred. Just by knowing the temple language. Does that make sense? Yes. So we want to talk about the Pharisees, but we never study the Seleucid period. We never study the Greek Empire and how the Hellenized came in to understand why the Pharisees rose up as a party. See, so then the Greco-Roman world comes in, and then we don't study the Greco-Roman world to understand the letters of Paul. So no wonder we have confusion. But there are themes, and the themes is the one on the myth, debunking the myth.
Yeah, it's not one to open.
Okay, don't worry about it. Just go back to the other ones. Okay. So, no worries. That's okay. Okay, so there are themes in the Bible. Okay, I want you to write them down. Okay? Covenants, righteousness and justice, honor and shame, righteousness and justice, honor and shame, new creation, order and chaos, sacred spaces. Okay? Can you pass that around? Okay? Now, those themes prevail throughout the whole Bible. All those themes. Covenants. The Bible is established on covenants. It's a covenantal book. Righteousness and justice is the character of the covenantal maker, God. He's a righteous king. And he is just. Correct? Honor is what brings him to those who obey the covenant, who behave with the righteousness and justice of the covenant maker. Okay? Shame comes when you transgress the covenant of this righteous God. Then your life goes from chaos in the realm of death to order, the realm of life. But it becomes chaotic, okay, if you break the covenant. Normally, people who break the covenant becomes oppressors, which brings shame. Are you with me? But we need to become a new creation in Messiah. That's reflected through the rituals in the temple. You want to go minister to God, go to the Lord to the temple? You did an immersion. You became a new creation. So now, you are a covenantal person. Now you behave in the character of the God of the Bible. Now you bring honor by your actions. Now your lifestyle now reflects the order that only that covenantal God can give you. Right? So how does he teach you to keep the covenant, act with righteousness, become honorable and a new creation? Through the sacred spaces, the feasts, and the Sabbath. Through meals. Covenantal stuff. Is this making sense? Now, what's interesting is that when you do those things, if you look at the little, if you look at the chart, inside of it, you have, it says life, order, Eden, and unholy. This is the realm of death outside of the little spheres. Inside of the spheres is where God's holiness prevails, where his order prevails, where his name is sanctified, where his temple is, everything is orderly. Example, if somebody went up to Jerusalem during the high holidays, like Passover or Pentecost, and you all lived in Jerusalem, and I am the guest, and you are the guest, you are not to charge me rent, because I am a guest of God in his city, his throne, his temple. You are to show me hospitality. Oh, you missed a great place to say hallelujah. You don't understand that. Man, you looking at me like I'm not trying to, and I'm going, I figure, surely they're going to respond to this one. Do you know what it is to be invited to Jerusalem? And the Lord says, just come, bring your best. Housing? Don't worry about it. We got you. Then everybody welcomes you and says, you have a place to stay? No. Oh, stay with me. Come on. I've experienced that in Jerusalem when I go there. I've been going there for a long time. And during the Sabbath, I remember before Sabbath, I met people random. Hey, you have a place for Shabbos? I said, no, come with me. And they treated me like they knew me my whole life. I know these people got to be out of their minds. Get me into their house and they don't know who I am. It's incredible. Right? What do you know about that? What do you know about that? Okay. So now when we understand that righteousness can be done in the time of Mesopotamia, in the time of the Egyptians, in the time of the Babylonians, in the time of the Greeks, in the time of the Romans, in the time of the Middle Ages, even today. Right? Why are we so upset what's going on in Afghanistan? Because a lot of people are being what? Oppressed right now. By their own. By their own. And the perception of how we handled it is as an oppressor. That makes everyone look bad. Now imagine if you're in covenant with the God of Israel and your job is to extend the hand to the needy, to the widows, to the strangers and the Levites, and instead of doing that we oppress them. What would that say about our covenantal God? That's what the temple teaches you. It's teaching you how to behave with him. For example, on the 3rd year is the 3rd year tithe. On the 6th year is the 6th year tithe, right? So you bring the tithe in the 3rd and the 6th year. And the 7th year, no one brought a tithe. Because now God says, I'll take care of you. You take care of my people? I take care of you now. Now, my king is so good that every 7 years we forgive each other's debts, right? He is so good every 7th year. Now, imagine if I owe $100,000 to you. And you tell me, you know what, brother? I don't like you. You don't pay me on time. But God says, I got to give righteousness. I'm going to honor him. Your debt is canceled. Not only that, I don't have to. I can have just one job. I could be there for my wife and my kids. Yes? How grateful would I be to you? How grateful would you be? So God does it so beautifully. He says, okay, if you are equitable and righteous towards one another every 7 years, then on the 50th year, the Jubilee, I'll cancel everyone's debts. That's how good my king is. Amen. He tests us on the physical level here, between you and me, on the horizontal relationship, and then he takes care of all of us on the vertical relationship. That's why the commandments of God, the 10 commandments, ladies, okay, the 10 commandments are written in a very unique way. Okay, the first 4 commandments is between you and God. And the next 6 is between you and your neighbor. So if you know who God is, and you don't worship any other gods, you don't take his name in vain, and you keep the Sabbath, then you're not going to disrespect your neighbor. Because it's a reciprocal relationship. Well, this little thing is my methodology that I've developed to teach me how I'll say 98% of every story in the Bible follows this theme. Give me a story in the Bible. Any story in the Bible. Ruth. Perfect. A woman who said that Ruth? Who said Ruth? Okay. A woman who is from Moab. She had no part in the kingdom. Away from the covenant. According to the Torah, no Moabite can be in the congregation into the 10th generation. But what happened in the event of Ruth, that was the 8th generation. Did God lie? No, there's a woman who is a widow herself. In the time of Ruth, a widow had 3 options. 1, death. 2, prostitution. 3, slavery. Not very good. Okay? But this woman, instead of she leaving for her family when Naomi said, go back to your kindred, go back to your country, go back to your people, is because she had no honor. Because she was not in a covenantal relationship with her husband to have children that gave her honor and protection when she got older. So Naomi was telling her, I got nothing to offer you. Go back to your people. You're young enough. Get a husband. Get kids. Do whatever. She didn't care. She, in turn, said to Naomi, no, I want your people to be my people. Your God to be my God. Where I go, where you go, I go. Covenant. Covenant. Now they say, your God will be my God. And what does she do? She takes another widow. Now let me put it to you in 21st century perspective. You send your son or daughter to Florida for a vacation. They get stranded in the middle of the highway at 3 in the morning. My family and I were driving through and we see your kids that I have no idea who they are, and I stop. I help them. They have no money. They have no communication. I give them a room. I get them a hotel room. I give them the phone to call you. I help them. I even pay some money so they can come back home. How grateful will you be with me? Did I really do it to you, or did I do it for your kids? Exactly. I did it for both because they are your image. So find out a year later that I'm coming to what? Phoenix is how you guys pronounce this place? Okay, Phoenix City. And I'm coming to your city. How would you treat me, although you never met me before? What kind of honor would you give me that I honored your kids when they most needed it and you were not there to protect them? So will you say that those who bless your children will be blessed by you? I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you, he told Abraham. Now you have a Ruth who's a widow who had no loyalty whatsoever, but chooses to be loyal to the God of Israel, knowing that she had no right of inheritance, that she had no rights of children, and she would not have a husband because what is she going to do? And still, she crossed the desert to take this woman back to the house of bread, Bethlehem. And when she gets there, she did not go imposing her will upon the widow. In turn, she is working the fields all day long to take care of a widow, knowing that she will never be recognized as a full citizen. Righteousness. In turn, God is a righteous God. So he looks at her and he goes, I'm going to send the prince for her, Boaz. Boaz sees her and he goes, who is her? Who is she? Oh, she's been working all day long to take care of the widow. And then he goes, don't mess with her. Let her do whatever she wants. Within the limits of what she could do. The corners of her fields. Get it? And he told everybody, leave her alone. Don't you dare touch her because it's known to me what she has done for my kindred. Reciprocity. Now, she is being blessed by the covenantal people because she was righteous and just with a widow, a daughter of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the God of Israel says, I will honor those who honor me. Now, through that, she brings honor to the dead, to her husband that died, and to the husband that Naomi had. By doing so, now she merits redemption. She was included like a last-minute package. Redeem the family, you got to take Ruth too. And the guy who was supposed to redeem her, if you read the story, it says in chapter 4 that he didn't want to do it because his genealogy would be damaged. How dare you have a Moabite in my genealogy? He refused to do righteous deed of a woman who gave everything up to help one of your kindred. He was more worried about what would people say about me instead of saying, how can we honor this woman who honor a daughter of our family? This is the reason why in the last chapter of the book of Ruth, I think the Lord has a great sense of humor. He brings all honor. She becomes a new creation by becoming part of Israel. She brought order to the house of Jesse. So in the last chapter in the book of Ruth, it shows the genealogy. Can you imagine the guy who rejected to reject her in the kingdom? And you see Yeshua walking in the mist? And the guy going to look like, who is that guy? Oh, that's the great-grandson of the woman that you did not want to redeem. Excuse me? The Lord raised a future Messiah from a Moabite? Because she helped a covenantal person. She extended righteousness. She gave her honor. She became a new creation. And she protected sacred spaces. Thus, she honored God, and God gave her holiness, life, order, and brought her into the kingdom. And out of her proceeded the people who would eventually be in the line of Messiah. That's what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? You can take any story in the Bible, more or less you're going to connect them with this. In the positive and the negative. If you break the covenant, you bring justice. If you break the covenant, you bring shame. And you put it to the test. Okay, you see what I mean? So in Genesis, God gives honor to creation. The Lord gives honor to Adam. Adam, you're my image. I'm going to take you and I'm going to put you in my most holy place, the garden. To become what? What was the job? Let's go to Genesis. Can somebody read Genesis 1:26? 1:26.
And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let him have dominion over the fish, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.
To have what? Dominion, correct? Did you know what the ancients believe in regards to the created? Okay, so check this out. This is really cool. There were a pantheon of gods in the Marduk Enuma Elish creation motif, the creation story, according to the Mesopotamians. They believed that the gods decided that the realm of death would only be available for the mortals, and that the mortals' job was to provide the needs of the gods. In other words, they are slaves to the gods. That was it. Now, imagine all of humanity thinking that these gods that were like more than humans, immortals, and they are abusing creation because they're the ones who created it. The sea was a god, and the fish was a god, and the air was a god, and all that stuff was a god. But immediately in creation, God says, no. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Listen to how it reads. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. And darkness, which represents chaos, represents death, represents exile, was on the face of the deep. Now, this verse is very important. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Whoa, wait a minute. That is profound. That is so unique. No one else have ever done that. If you understand what that means, then you'll understand why Yeshua walked on water. Then you'll understand why God asked him to walk through the Red Sea. Then you'll understand why Jonah asked to be thrown in the water during the storm. Then you'll understand why the second generation walked through the River Jordan. Then you'll understand why Moses was adopted after he was thrown in the River Nile. Then you'll understand why the false prophet, will be thrown in the lake of fire with Satan after the 1,000-year reign. I gave you a lot there. You know why? Because you can keep that one. That's for you. Okay? You can keep this one. That's for you. Come on, get it. I got some more back there. I'll give you guys tomorrow. All right. So let me break down Genesis, and then we're gonna once I break it down, we're gonna go to Exodus 14. Okay? Hopefully you'll enjoy this. This is all temple related, by the way. So imagine you come out of Egypt and you believe that all the gods had dominion over creation and that you were created to be slaves of the gods. And then when God says, by the way, there were images of gods everywhere. So, do you know the word, and man was created in the image of God, let us make man in our image? You know what the word image is there? But tell them, you know what the word is? Idol. Like a statue? Now imagine the contrast that God is telling Israel that God's plan was, instead of worshiping the created, God put the created humanity in order to direct God for the knowledge of the Lord. Is that making sense? So now this is really cool. Okay, check this out. So Adam is created with no purpose, with no function. He was just dust in a body. Then the Lord breathed on him, and then God put him in the what? In the garden, and he told him to keep in guard, right? So before that, he was just dead man walking. No life, no purpose, no function. That's who we were before covenant. We had no function. We were building a house, having a career, building a family with no function, no order. The moment that we accepted Yeshua, now we came in the covenantal relationship, and the Lord breathed on us His Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, to give us life, to bring us into the realm of covenant of justice and righteousness and honor. Does that make sense? Okay, so now, they believe that humanity was created for the sole purpose of slavery. Immediately in Genesis chapter 1, God says, that was not my purpose for creation. My purpose for creation was that through them, everyone will worship me, and through their dominion over my creation, they will show that I'm the God. In other words, He is a righteous and just God, because instead of creating a workforce to be slaves to Him, He created them in His likeness to have dominion over His creation as His image. Not for us to get the worship, but that through us we redirect it to Him, like you did today. Come on, man. That was a good place to say amen. Help me. Come on. Don't make me preach. Don't make me preach. I was Pentecostal. I could do that. Okay? So now what's interesting is in Genesis chapter 1, we see that God gives function to the whole earth. He's the one who created it. But He brings order from chaos. Remember, repeat after me. Chaos is represented by darkness, death, exile. Remember that. So the garden in Israel, the garden in Genesis represents God's order, which represents life, order, Eden, and holiness. That's the gospel. God brought us from the realm of death into the realm of life, so that now we may represent Him the proper way. So everything we do is to give Him honor and praise. Okay, so let's go to Exodus 14. Let me show you something. Now remember, the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the sea, right? Have you ever wondered why that is? Why is it so important to say that? And the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the sea. In the book of Revelation, my sister, you read that there will be no more sea. Correct? Revelation 21, you just read it. But that makes no sense. That makes no sense. You know why? Keep your finger in that verse there where you're at. I'm going to go to Genesis real quick. I want to show you something. It makes no sense. You know why? Because when I read the book of Genesis, chapter 8, verse 22, God says, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night shall now cease. But wait a minute, is God coming to the earth, or are we going to Him? So I don't understand. His word cannot change, so I don't get it. There will be no more sea, but yet He says, as the earth remains. Because the sea represented in the ancient world chaos, death, exiled. It was a gateway to the underworld. It was a gateway to Sheol, Leviathan, Ra'av, Poseidon, in Greco-Roman world. You get this? So to them, the rivers, the lakes, and the seas was the gateway to the underworld. Remember that. That's why the psalm says, your waves overflow me. That's why in the book of Revelation it says that the woman was in the wilderness and the dragon opened its mouth and the big flood came after her. But then the earth helped the woman and then she survived with a man-child. That means that the divine judgment against the woman, Israel, she was vindicated and she survived the waters because the floods did not overtake her. Chaos, death. Get it? Okay. So when you read in Genesis 8, it tells us, as long as there is these things. So what if I submit to you that in the book of Revelation it says there will be no more sea, there will be no more chaos, no more death. But the Bible establishes God's sovereignty over His creation by saying, and the Spirit of the Lord hover over the waters of the sea. Interesting. You know what the ultra-Orthodox of Judaism say about that verse in Genesis 1? that it was the spirit of Messiah hovering over the waters of the sea. And then all of a sudden now we see Yeshua calming the storm and walking on water. That's the message of resurrection right there. I'll prove it to you. We go to Genesis 14. Who can read that verse? Verse 1. You'll see why I'm going to give you the verse in a minute. Can you read it for me?
Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Bnei Israel so that they come down to the brook, Piharot, between Migdal and the sea. You are camped by the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will say,
That's it. So now, thank you. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that they turn and camp before Pihahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. You shall camp before by the sea. That's a lot of information. We miss it. How many of you have studied for 1 hour that one verse? It will take you that 1 hour to understand it. Let me explain to you in about 10 minutes. Okay? Remember that the Pharaoh made an accusation against Israel. There was a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, correct? And he made an accusation that the Israelites were too many in number and they will take over. So let's just kill them. Throw the babies in the river Nile. Well, the babies don't know how to swim. So they drowned. Remember, if they believed that the rivers were holy and that the God of the river was the guy who controlled life and death, so if the babies die, to them in their myth, they believed that the God of the underworld found the kids guilty of the accusation of Pharaoh. Now, this is the cool part. In the Hammurabi Code, which was a legal book back in the time of a little bit before Abraham, there is a command. There's a law in the Code of Hammurabi. You got to read that. It's really cool. It says that I'm going to paraphrase. If I accuse you of something, it was guilty until the river found you innocent. So they tie your hands. Pay attention. They tie your hands and your feet, and they'll throw you either the Euphrates or the other one. The Tigris, thank you. The Euphrates and the Tigris, with your hands tied and your feet tied. Ea and Enki were the respective gods of on the rivers. Okay? So now, if you survive the waters, then if I'm the accuser, now I got to get my hands tied and my feet tied, and they throw me in the water. And when I die, then all of my money, all of my property is transferred to the innocent. Let me repeat that again. This ancient law, by the way, and by the way, the Torah talks about this. When Israel worshipped the golden calf after the covenantal relationship, Moses came down from the mountain. He took the golden calf. He grinded it as dust. He threw it from the brook that was coming from the mountain, and he made all of Israel drink it. 3,000 died. In other words, divine judgment. Bitter waters, chapter 5, is the same thing for immorality. Remember, moral impurity. That's important. Okay? All right. So now remember that in the book of Revelation, you're going to have Satan being thrown in a lake of fire. Hands tied and feet tied. Now it makes sense. So check this out. So now Moses is thrown into the river. But if you pay attention to the way that the Bible describes the ark, the miniature ark that the mother of Moses built is almost exactly like the big old ark that Noah built. So now the daughter of Pharaoh is in the river, divine river. She sees this child coming out, and she adopts him. There's a big problem here. How can she adopt Moses when he's an Israelite, a Hebrew, and her father said they all got to be dead? And when the king made a decree, no one can break it because he survived the water. And according to her myth, he was innocent of the accusation. Thus, you have adoption. Have you ever wondered why? Have you ever wondered why we need to be baptized? Yeah, but new creation, but why? Let me continue with my story. Now, it'll make sense in a minute. I'm just throwing a wrench at you, so it'll make you think. So all of a sudden now the children of Israel die in the river Nile. Right? They're scared out of their minds. They are redeemed from Egypt. It was quicker to go by the way of the sea, via Maris, than it was by the king's highway. But the Lord takes them by the king's highway. But instead of going up through Elat, all the way up, he says, no, you're going to make a left, make a right, and go by the sea. Now, if you read the story in Exodus, you notice that the Egyptians were not afraid at all of crossing. But the Israelites were scared out of their minds. Read the story. You see it. They're like waiting for the pillar of fire to be removed to just run through. Why? Because in their myth, in their mythology, the God of the Egyptians found the Israelites guilty when they were dying in the river Nile. So why should they worry about the water? But the Israelites, they're scared. Now it dries up. Dry land and water, like Genesis. Dry land and creation from water. Genesis 6, with the time of Noah. Dry land. Do you know when was the day when let's go to Genesis chapter 8:14. I'm connecting it all. I'm going to do it. Trust me, there's a method to this madness. I'm going to come back to Genesis 14. Are you enjoying this? Yes. This is all about temple, by the way. 8. I want you to go to 8. I want someone to read A4. And then I want someone to read 8:13. A4. Who's got A4? Okay. Read that again. So let me ask you a question. Which calendar are they following? Yeah, but which one? There's 4 of them. There's 4 calendars in the Hebrew Bible. Did you know that? There's the one for the tithe. There's 4 calendars. Let me see if I found that here real quick. There's 1st of Nisan for the beginning of the agricultural cycle. Passover for the feast. It's agriculture. That's the beginning of months. Then you have the counting of the Jubilees and the Shemitah. Sabbaticals. That happened in the month of Tishri. That's a civil calendar. Then you have the one for the New Year's of trees, Shabbat. Why do you need New Year's for trees? Because the commandment says that you cannot harvest the fruit until the 3rd year. Well, when do you start counting? You got New Year's for trees. Then you got to bring tithe of animals. A lamb of the 1st year, a red heifer of 3. You got different animals with different ages. So when do you start counting? Get it? So there are different calendars with different functions, all connected with the temple. So the one from Genesis 1 to Genesis 11, from Genesis 1 to Exodus 11, the calendar spoken is the one from Tishri to Elul. We are today in the month of Elul. We are right, you can see it, we are right here in the month of Elul. You can't see it very well. In the month of Elul. Okay? So, check this out. From Genesis 1 to Exodus 11, they're using the reckoning of time from Tishri to Tishri. Tishri becoming the 1st month of the civil calendar. Nisan becomes the 7th month of the civil calendar. Watch. Follow with me. Nisan. That's the 1st month of which calendar? Are you sure? No. I said it's for the agricultural feast, religious calendar. Tishri, Tishri right here, is the 1st month of which calendar? Civil. You see why we're confused? Why should we be confused? Because we don't study the temple, we don't study the functions. Because if you count the Jubilees, you don't do that starting from Nisan. When have you ever declared the Jubilee? When is the day you declare the Jubilee? What day of the year? Yom Kippur. But by the way, did you know that was the only time they blew the shofar one time in 50 years? You know what it was called? The sound of the great trump. So anytime you see the sound of the great trump, it's a direct link to the Day of Atonement and the Jubilee, because you only blew the trumpet in the temple on the Day of Atonement when you declare the Jubilee. Now you know when Messiah is coming. Because the Bible in Matthew 24 tells you quite clear when it is. It's the trump, the last trump, and the last great trump. Pentecost, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur. Am I making a good case for the temple? Okay, so watch this. So repeat after me. If you're confused, repeat after me. The first month of the religious calendar becomes the seventh month of the civil calendar. No, let me show it to you. Nisan is the first month of the feast calendars. Yes? Tishri becomes the last month of the last ingathering for Sukkot. But how can it be the last month? It's only the seventh month. The year has 12. Because it's the last month in regards to the agricultural cycle. Have you studied the fauna and the flora in the Mediterranean? See, that's why it doesn't make sense. Because you have to understand when the rains come. So based on rains, the early and latter rains, they only happen certain times a year. So right before the spring, you get rains for the crops to come out after the summer, and then you get the last harvest, then the rains come after that for the, you see what I'm saying? Everything's connected. All right. So now Nisan is the first month of the religious feast calendar, agricultural. Repeat after me. Nisan, first month of the religious, agricultural, feast calendar. Good students. Tishri becomes the seventh month. Tishri becomes the seventh month of the religious, agricultural, feast calendar. Tishri is the first month of the civil calendar, which counts the jubilees and the sabbatical years. Yes, oh, you got it. So watch this. Nisan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Elul, 7 in Tishri. So when you go from Tishri to Nisan, you count Tishri, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So cycles of 7. You got it. Let's go read this verse again. Watch. Genesis 8, verse 4. The ark rested in the 17th day, in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, on the Mount of Ararat. Now that I explained this to you, which month did the ark rested on Mount Ararat? Tishri. No. Nisan. Because Genesis 1 through Exodus 11 is using the civil calendar. Because Israel is not a nation yet. They were given the command to keep the new year in Nisan when they were redeemed out of Egypt. It's in chapter 12 of the book of Exodus. Don't believe me, go look it up. From Exodus 12 all the way to the end of the book, everything is based on the agricultural cycles, except for the Jubilee and the sabbatical years. Is this making sense, brother? Please tell me, because you've been studying with me for a while, so it seems to be. All right? I'm trying to go through all of this explanation because what I'm about to show you is very significant. Let's read it again. The ark rested on the 7th month. What month is that? Nisan, the 17th day of the month, right? What happened on the history of that date? I'm sorry? And what happened on the first fruit offering? in history. Guys, Yeshua resurrected. Yeshua resurrected on the same day in history when the ark rested on Mount Ararat. Just like in the days of Noah, so shall be the son of... Hello? There was a flood, divine judgment. 8 righteous going through the waters, and they did not drown because that's resurrection. They were innocent of the accusation. But now there's a new creation. Check this out. Let's go to verse 14. Was it worth the whole calendar thing now? All right. So verse 13 says this. Watch. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, watch, the waters were dried up from the earth. Ooh. Remember, when the waters and dry land separate, it means what? In the little thing. New creation. Thank you. Interesting. But what day in history is that? So you got, he resurrected on Nisan, right? That's the 7th month, correct? Of the secular year, civil year, correct? Please tell me you get this. Okay, now watch. 8, 9, 10, 11, the month of Elul 12, Tishri becomes the first month. What happens on the 7th month of the feast? On the first month of the feast. On the first day of the feast. What happens on the 7th month of Tishri? What do we celebrate? Trumpets, correct? Which happens to be the first month of the civil calendar, Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. Now you know why it's called Rosh Hashanah. The head of the year. Are you confused yet? There's a reason why we don't study the temple. That's why we're confused. The Jews are not confused. How come the Jews are not confused? Because they've been raised with these principles from the time they were little. Because everything is structured on the temple. So they know where we are in time. We have the Messiah and we don't know. Genesis chapter 8 is telling us about the resurrection of Yeshua, and we are about to remember something. We are to blow the trumpets. The commandment of the day of trumpets is to hear the shofar, to hear the trumpet. You know why? One of the names of that day is Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. Another name is Yom HaSikaron, which means the day of remembrance. But what in the world are we remembering? The new creation. When God judged the earth, and 8 men were found righteous, and they survived the waters, the waves, the flood. And then what happens in chapter 8 and 9, guys? Noah comes out of the ark. What's the first thing he built? Altar, a temple of God. And what is the next thing he does? He plants a garden. He becomes Adam. And then God makes a covenant with him, and he tells, be fruitful and multiply. New creation. New creation. So therefore now let's go to Exodus chapter 14. Remember, Israel fell into chaos. Israel fell into the realm of death. Israel came into slavery. Israel was redeemed from death, from chaos, from exile. Correct? Are we doing okay with time? Can you give me like 20 more minutes? Is that okay? Okay, don't sound so excited, all right? I mean, all right. So check this out. So it gives you a very interesting information. And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the children of Israel, that they turn and camp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. You shall camp before by the sea. Okay, perfect. The sea represented what? Death, chaos, exile, right? Okay, so now, why did God tell them to go opposite Baal Zephon? Why there? Why crossing the water? Okay, check this out. in the ancient world, specifically in the Ugaritic creation motif, that is where Lebanon is, Lebanon and Syria, in that area, okay? There was the god of the pantheons, and then the god El, which is an attribute, means almighty. Okay, there's a dispute between Baal and Yam. Repeat with me, Yam. Yam means sea. That's what I'm saying. That's what it means. Okay, so there was a cosmic battle between Baal, the storm god, and Yam, the sea. Kathor, one of the gods of the underworld, he gives a club to Baal to defeat Yam. Now, this is what they believed. It's crazy, but it's true. Okay, so they believed this. They actually did. And then when Baal hit a home run with Yam and defeats the sea, then El builds them a huge palace and a temple on a high hill. There was one in the north, Baal Zephon. Baal Zephon. Opposite Baal Zephon. Opposite Baal Zephon, there's a temple to Baal on a mountain. This is a cosmic battle between Egypt and vindication, because they taught you that in the ancient world that any god who would defeat Yam, the sea, was considered the victor over all creation. That's why in Genesis 1 says, and the Spirit of the Lord hover over the waters of the sea. And that's why you have 40 days and 40 nights. Not 45, not 50, not 39. 40 days and 40 nights were rained. Why? Because 40 was the numerical ideogram, or Ea and Enki, the gods of the underworld, and they consider themselves possessors of the dominion of the earth and creation. So God says, no, I'm the one who dominates everything, 40 days and 40 nights. To make the point. Did you know that in the temple there was a huge laver? You know what the name of that laver was? Yes? You know what it was called? Yam. And you know what the measurement was? 40 se'ah. You know why? To bring the point home that the God of that temple has dominion over the underworld and dominion over death. That's what the laver represented. I hope I do a good job in creating the desire to learn about the temple. Because it just blew me away when I learned this stuff. I'm going like, man, how can I not learn this? Okay, so check this out. So now Israel is freaking out. Are you serious, Moses? Don't you know that our children will die in the river? And now you're bringing us to the water? Seriously? And the Egyptians come through, and it says that all the Egyptians drowned. Divine judgment. Guilty, right? And not one Israelite died. So wait a minute. So now when you go to chapter 15, it says that Moses and the children of Israel sang the song of the Lord and spoke. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his riders he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength. In song he has become my salvation. He is my Elohim. I will praise him. My father's God, I would exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and all his armies he cast into the sea. Chaos, death, right? His chosen captains are also drowned in the Red Sea. The depth have covered them. They sank to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, has become glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, has dashed the enemy in pieces. And in the greatness of your excellence, and you have overthrown those who rose against you, and you sent forth your wrath, which consumed them like stubble. And you will blast on the blast of your nostrils. The waters will gather together. The flood stood upright like a heap, and the death congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake. I will divide a spoil. My desire shall be satisfied on them. I will draw my sword. My hand shall destroy them. You blew with your wind, and the sea cover them. They sank like the lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, O God, among the gods? I mean, there are no other gods. Why would they say that? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Makes no sense unless you understood Egyptology, how they lived in the realm of idolatry, and they came assimilated into it. And now God, once and for all, reveals to them who the only sovereign of creation is, for them not to be afraid. He reminded them, you are vindicated. Whoever defeated the sea vindicates you in the eyes of the nations that you were oppressed. And wait. The wealth of the wicked will be transferred to the righteous. They go over to the Red Sea, to the River Jordan, and there's a woman who hides the spies. And Joshua chapter 4 tells you, and she was afraid out of her mind. And you know why she helped them? Because she heard that the God of Israel controlled the sea. That's why he didn't even come out to fight against Israel. Now, just think for 1 second. 40 years. Not 41, not 38, 40. In the wilderness, which represents death, represents exile, represents chaos. Bring them into the realm of life, the garden, the land of Israel, crossing the River Jordan. Now, when you read the text, it says that the north to the south, they separated. And the waters went up north into the city of Adam. It tells you went all the way up to the city of Adam, and they crossed the River Jordan, and the people from Jericho says, we aren't fighting against those guys. We're not going out to fight them. I mean, that was an army in Jericho. How come they didn't go to fight against the Israelites? Because they saw the River Jordan open. And to them, it meant that whoever controls the waters controls creation. The battle was won just by mere fact of walking through the water. New creation into adoption. So, check this out. Remember when I told you that someone makes an accusation against you, you got to be thrown in the lake of fire? So have you ever wondered the legality of baptism? I went to a church that they said that you take baptism classes, and then the moment you got baptized, it's so that you give your tithe to that church and that church only. I grew up like that. And the pastor would get mad at you if you visit another church. You got baptized in my church. You're a member of my church. You're out of order. What? I know. So, what if I submit to you that the enemy, according to the book of Revelation, says he goes to and fro to the heavens to accuse the brethren? Because when you and I were born, we were born out of chaotic. How many weeks normally a baby in the womb? 40 weeks. What a coinkydinky. Patterns of 7s and 40s. So now we come out of the womb in a fallen state because we, sadly, because of Adam, rebellion, now we are outside the realm of life. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just born into a condition that no sacrifice in the temple can correct. There was no sacrifice in the temple that could do away with the one thing we all have. A death sentence. That's the virus no one can see. We all have it. It's just when. Right? More than ever, we should get this now. Okay, so death is that virus that already comes with us from the time we're born. We all have come into the realm of life and realm of death. Satan is the master of this world, but he's not the creator of its owner. His only authority is based on our chaos. He can't even make you do anything. When I understood that, my life was freed. It's like, oh, so I'm the one who gives this idiot power? So what do I need to do not to do that? Live in covenant, be righteous and just, honor God, be a new creation, guard God's sacred spaces, and live orderly. And then everyone would ask you, how come you're blessed everything you do? Because I serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the great and awesome God, supreme God. Can I take you to him? He sent his son to cure your virus. But what is my virus? You die. Well, yeah, I don't want to live. I want to live forever. Okay, I got the vaccine, but it's not the one they want to give you. It's a real good one. You actually live. Guaranteed. You see what I'm saying? I'm not trying to make fun of the whole thing. I'm just trying to make an example. Okay? So then you bring that person who has the one thing no sacrifice in the temple can offer. Because the sacrifices in the temple cannot cure death. It could atone for your own willful stuff. Rebellion, immoral behavior, you cannot go in. There's a separation between God and moral immorality. That's the one thing that separates us from God. So then you say, hey, I want what you got. I want eternal life. Can you give me that vaccine? And I say, yes, let me bring you to my master. Father, my king, my shield, my strength. I come to you in the name of your son, Yeshua, whom you bestowed beneficial kindness and you give honor. Will you please consider the petition of my brother who wants to come into the realm of life by allowing him to be in your kingdom in the name of your son who you've given honor? Will you please accept him? And then God says, yes, I accept him. But now he needs to keep my covenant so everyone will know that I'm righteous, that I'm honorable, that I make him a new creation, that he lives orderly. Now, keep the Sabbath. Would you like to have dinner with the Lord now? He'll make a whole table for you and your family so that you're not in the chaotic world where all the murders and all immorality occurs Friday night, and you can be with your family praying for your children. And then you can go to Passover when you showed your children about redemption. Pentecost, where he gave you the eternal freedom. You see the whole pattern, right? And then he accepts you. Oh, but there's a problem. We committed treason now against Satan. Because he's the master of the world. We were born on the chaotic waters in his realm. That's why we got a name when we were born. The Father gave us a name. Our little Father gave us a name. Right? But then when you come into the kingdom of God, he gives you a new name. Because you don't belong into the realm of death. You now belong in the realm of life. Okay, so the enemy now is really mad. Because you committed treason against him. And he can't do anything about it. Because the blood of Yeshua becomes as a conduit or the indexing. See, the blood worked in the ancient world to solidify and ratify covenants. That's what it worked for. You know, you come into a covenant, it's like a signature today. You want to buy a car, back then you put your blood. That means that your life depended on whether or not you're going to keep your word to pay that. Okay, your honor, your covenantal contract. If you did not follow through with what you said and what you agreed to do, then your God will be shamed. So therefore, the blood of Messiah now is sprinkled symbolically in us to say that we are part of the covenantal community. Now we are bound to be a servant of God and not a slave to the world. Because we have a better master, you see. He is good, he is kind, he's righteous, he's holy, he's faithful, and he's loyal. But still, we live in the realm of death still. Satan is not happy. So he tries to destroy you. He makes your life miserable. That's why when you came to the gospel, your life was a living hell for about a year or two. Hello? My life was chaotic for the first 2 years. Talk about like breaking through all the stuff that I used to do. I had to put myself some serious, strict stuff to finally recognize that the enemy has no power over me. And I'm going like, okay, so what do I need to do? Follow the instructions. Torah. Follow the instructions. And he will guide you to the will of God. And he tells you exactly what to do. What to do with your wife. What to do with your children. How to treat your neighbor. What to eat. What not to eat. Every behavior he shows you so that you could always be in the realm of life and in good graces with him. That's really good. I don't have to be afraid like, I wonder what the Lord wants me to do today. Just read the Bible. He tells you. How do I know the will of God? Oh, how I love your word, oh Lord, for your Torah is in my heart. I love to do your will, oh Lord. It's so simple. Okay. So now the enemy doesn't like you. You did a lot of stuff for him. He has all the goods on you. He's going before the Lord and says, you know that man over there? I remember he did this, and he's guilty of transgression. Plus, he betrayed me. The Lord is sitting on his throne, Yeshua at the right hand, our advocate. The enemy keeps he's doing a good case against you. You must have been really good back then. Right? And then all of a sudden now God says, okay guys, stop arguing. Throw him in the water. Baptism. Throw him in the water. You didn't get it. Baptism becomes the legal way that God will justify you in the eyes of everybody. He will vindicate you. Whoever survives the water is vindicated as righteous. So therefore, you go in the water and you make that confession, go in the water. When you come out, you say, Shema, hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be your name and your kingdom forever. And then he calls you my sons and daughters. And now he has given you the right to be called the sons of God. Now he gives you a new name. He gives you an inheritance. And now the enemy has no authority over you because you survived the waters. Baptism now carries a legal aspect that we never, ever considered before, unless we go back to the ancient ways of beliefs. So when, in Shabbat, before I eat the meal, I wash my hands. People always have issues with that. Oh, Rico, but that's rabbinical. No, that comes from the temple. When the priests went to the temple, they needed to wash their hands and feet. But also there is a psalm that says, who shall ascend the mountain of the Lord? The mountain is the temple. Those with clean, unclean, idolatry, actions. So when we wash our hands before eating the bread on Shabbat, what we are actually saying is, Lord, my King, my shield, my strength, my rock, thank you for vindicating me. Thank you for restoring me. Thank you for redeeming me. Thank you for sanctifying us. Thank you for raising our level. Thank you for allowing me to be in your covenant. Thank you for restoration of my family. Thank you for inviting me to your sacred space. Am I worthy to sit at your table? Am I righteous to sit at your table? Am I even worthy to be anywhere on the planet near you? And the Lord says, yes, wash your hands. Now it takes a complete different meaning. Sitting at the table of the Lord on a Shabbat. And if you read the blessing, it says, for he has sanctified us through his commandments. He sanctified you. Raise your level of honor so that you can sit in sacred space, the Sabbath. People who came from the realm of death into the realm of life. What taught me this? The temple. People ask me all the time, why are you so passionate about the Torah? And what people don't realize is when you have a testimony and you've done stuff that you know when you read it in the Torah that was the death penalty, and I'm still here. Worse. Even though I don't deserve it, he gave me a family. I have 2 kids, 29 and 24. They want to be there on a Friday night. They allow me. I sit on my seat that no one sit in and if I'm not there for Shabbat. And when we get to the blessing of the children, they come to me. My men. One is married. The other one's getting married. They want the blessing from their dad. Someone who I know is not worthy of that honor. I have a wife. For the life of me, I don't know why in the world she loves me so much. And she's an incredible person. And I get an opportunity to pray for my wife, the best gift I've ever gotten in my life. Someone that I know I don't deserve. And I even told her, if I would have met you at 91, 92, I would never value the type of person you are. I didn't know how. The only reason why I even know how to love anything is because God taught me. When I sit there at the table every Shabbat and my kids are there, they want to be there. One is 29, one is 24. I remember where I was when I was 24 and 29. I know exactly where I was and what I was doing. And the Lord had completely reversed all that and allowed me to come into his realm to bless my children. How can I not be loyal and faithful to that great King? All he wants to do is bring our honor, raise our level of honor so that the enemy never have anything to say against you. And all he wants is for you to consider his covenant, be loyal to it, follow it, live it, believe it, be a kingdom of holy, righteous people to help the needy, the strangers, the widows, the Levites, to bring honor to his name by our behavior and our honor. Become that new creation that are so grateful to be vindicated, that we should have died, but yet he sent his son to intercede on our behalf so that our lives will be orderly. How many people in Afghanistan right now will do anything to be here in peace that you have today? They don't have it. Their own want to kill them. And the world is been gearing up to turn on each other. And some of us are taking the bait within the community. The country's been turned upside down and we're letting it happen. Because we're supposed to be the people reflecting the light of order of God, and we're not doing it. We're too afraid. What will they say about me? What will they think about me? Well, so what? The Lord has already done something that no one can do. He removed that eternal decree of death, so that if we die today, He will resurrect us. You know why? Because He is true. He is faithful. He will not lie to us. And we need to believe that. The moment death is no longer the issue and you lose fear of the death, you can do wonders for God. You can reach amazing things when you believe truly. So in Genesis 1, He says, I have dominion over chaos and death. In Genesis 6, I have dominion over death and chaos and death. In Genesis 11, I have 14, I have dominion over the sea. In Joshua 5, I have dominion over the sea. In Isaiah 43, if you go through the rivers, they will not overflow you. If you go through the waves, they will not kill you. I am the Lord your God. I will save you. He gives us salvation. Jonah, he tells us, throw me in the water, the storm will be calm, and then he survives the fish. Resurrection right there. All through the Bible, God has been constantly letting us know that the one thing that humanity cannot do anything about, He will conquer, which is death. And the whole Bible is geared to show humanity that He is a sovereign and conquering death. He's given us that promise of eternal life, but we still don't believe Him. And we're still afraid. Because we're hanging on to this lousy life that we have today because we created a chaos. When in fact, we can create Eden on earth if we just believe the promises of our God. I choose to believe Him. And I choose not to be afraid of everything in the corner. I'm concerned, but He conquered already. There was a storm. Yeshua goes on a ship. He falls asleep. Yo, man, there's a storm. Why are you bothering me, man? Go to sleep. He calms the storm. Excuse me? You calm the storm? And then He calms the seas. Oh, snap. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God, telling us that God has dominion over death? How many more signs do we need? Everything. Peter gets out of the boat, goes on the water, but it says, as long as he kept his eyes on Yeshua, he was walking on water. When he removed his eyes, he fell in the water. He cried out, and immediately he brought him out. That's resurrection. It will have to come to a point in which we're going to be persecuted enough that we have no more choice but actually call out to God instead of looking for local leaders to do something that they will never do. We have been so conditioned to only believe in what men can do because we are orderly people in this country. But ultimately, those people are supposed to follow the principles of a covenantal relationship, to be just and righteous. Even our Supreme Court is no longer officiating in that standard. So maybe a little persecution is what we need to get our act straightened out. Maybe this is what we need in order to see how the wonders that God will do. So the children will have a great life knowing that even through the tribulation, He never left us. Even through the hard times, He never abandoned us like we abandon people in a torn nation. You see how clear the message of resurrection, you can see it now? Remember, death equals sea, chaos, exiled, shame. If you follow those principles when you read the Bible, every time you see chaos, or you see the sea, or you see the lakes or the rivers, it's a representation of what God has dominion over. And you know what's amazing? He believes in you to bring that message to the nations. That is so cool. Why does He do it? I don't know. I don't question my King. When He speaks, I do. But this little guy from Puerto Rico, 55 years old now, and I've been to 24 countries teaching the Torah. And I've seen some amazing places in the world. And ugly ones too. But I'm thankful for all of them. Because I cannot believe for the life of me why would the Lord Almighty will even trust me with His word. And for that I'm forever grateful. To have the opportunity to minister to you and to maybe say one thing that get you excited about His word, about His house, about His temple. If I've done that tonight, I'm going to sleep good. I'm not expecting you to remember everything. What I do expect is for you to value, love, be faithful, be loyal, and don't doubt that my King will forever will stand for you. Because there's no unrighteousness in him. Shabbat Shalom.